Welcome back. United Kingdom Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has initiated a crackdown on the infamous grooming gangs in the country. During last year's Conservative leadership contest, Sunak had pledged that if he became the Prime Minister, he would make stamping out these grooming gangs and justice for their victims a personal priority. Now, grooming gangs is a major concern for UK since it targets vulnerable young girls. And according to several reports, British Pakistani men are perpetrators of most of these cases. Rishi Sunak has openly criticized, quote, political correctness over grooming gangs and has initiated a crackdown. First up, a look at what this crackdown basically has in it. So UK government will launch this crackdown as far as a grooming gangs task force is concerned. This task force will include specialist officers who will help cops in their investigations. The agency will help local forces by offering what is being termed ethnicity data. New laws will also be introduced to ensure harsher punishments as far as these crimes are concerned.
What happened to vulnerable children in Rochdale, Telford, Rotherham and other places is simply appalling. Last year I said that if I became Prime Minister I wanted to take decisive action to help stamp out this evil. Today we're announcing a set of new measures to achieve that. A specialist task force has been set up by the police, tougher sentencing, a new national hotline and data analytics to make sure that we can identify and catch perpetrators. All these measures will make sure that we can clamp down on the horrific abuse of children that we've seen. We must ensure that we have a country and a society where children can grow up safe, and we won't rest until we achieve that.
So what exactly are these grooming gangs? It is a group of people who sexually exploit vulnerable women in society. The victims are often underage girls. According to a report, over 1,000 such kids were abused by these gangs, for example, in a town called Telford Town in central UK. The victims are abused through a process of psychological manipulation, and according to reports, majority of accused in such cases were British Pakistani men. Several reports on this issue since 2014 have shown that cops were actually afraid of launching probes or bringing accused to justice because they feared of being branded Islamophobic. There was a bombshell report published in 2014 by the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, which gathered data from 7 years of hearings and testimonies from 725 witnesses. This 2014 report claimed 1,400 kids were subjected to sexual abuse. This report was published on the basis of cases in Rotherham between 1997 to 2013. Perpetrators were mostly Pakistan origin men. Girls aged 11 years were trafficked across North England. Report also mentions that agencies should not fear affecting community relations when they look into such crimes, and that people must be able to raise concerns without being labelled racist. There is another Home Office research though which says there is not enough evidence to stereotype Asians or blacks as far as these crimes are concerned. This report suggests that this kind of abuse was carried out by young white men. And there is a GB News investigative documentary released this year titled Grooming Gangs Britain's Shame, which focuses on the grooming of mainly underage white girls by men of Pakistani origin. This documentary claims child abuse was perpetrated by British Pak men and claims this issue has been ignored by the police for almost a decade. Let me also give you an idea of how these grooming gangs operate. Firstly, the gang starts by building trust with their victims. They may offer them gifts, attention, affection to gain their trust and make them feel special. Next step is to isolate the victim from her family and friends, limiting their access to phones or the internet and persuading them to keep secrets from their loved ones. They might also use intimidation tactics to control victims. This can involve threats of violence or harm to the victim or their family if they refuse to comply. The gangs may also use drugs and alcohol to manipulate the victims, which makes it easier for them to sexually assault the victims without resistance. The perpetrators may blackmail the victim with personal information and photos to control them. UK's Home Secretary Suella Braverman has also issued a detailed statement defending this crackdown. She said vulnerable white English girls are being trapped, drugged and raped. Braverman claims that most of the accused are British Pakistani men. She went on to say that child sexual abuse is one of the most horrific crimes. It devastates victims. Their childhood is robbed. She assured the citizens that the despicable abusers must be brought to justice. These grooming gang members, she says, should not be able to hide. Culprits must face the full force of the law for their crimes. But Sunak government, especially Braverman, is facing a lot of backlash too. Critics say the lawmakers are trying to make this an issue based on ethnicity, which has its own pitfalls. They believe that this kind of approach could hamper tackling the crime itself. Critics say that adult perpetrators don't come from just one background. They slammed Braverman for ignoring her own department's evidence and broader research, which I mentioned earlier. Critics claim that the government has fueled the perception of this being an Asian problem. We'll follow this story as this crackdown continues in UK. For now, it's time for me to take the lead. Thanks a lot for watching.